Hey everybody, how's it going? Hopefully my audio and everything is okay. I got set up ahead of time, actually this time. Looks good from here. Hopefully the levels are okay. Let me bring this down a little bit. So we got kind of loud music. Alright, so today is part 2 of the Hey Cutso stream that I'm working on. I'll show it over this way. Oh, it's super bright, you can hardly see the details. But this is the pattern style number 19 from Cutso, the company who I'm partnered with to do these little sewing streams. And we are making this sailor shirt and bloomers that I started right before my Europe trip, and now I'm back and ready to keep going. Yes, Sochin, I am feeling a little bit better. I had kind of like a post-con sickness. I think it was just from travel, because I was on a plane for like 11 hours straight in one day. But anyway, I'm feeling a little bit better. I luckily was able to avoid the worst of it, I think, because I rested and took medicine like immediately when I discovered I wasn't feeling well. So hopefully I am ready to keep going and not get bogged down by not feeling well. I'm gonna turn down the brightness just slightly. Hopefully that makes things a little easier to see. Alright, well I'm gonna go ahead and get started. Oh, well, I guess before I start stitching, I did a little bit of stuff in between. The only thing I really did was prepare all of the pieces to just be sewn together right away. Oh, I need to turn that up a little bit. Apelcatrox, thank you for the sub for 4 months in a row, saying, already 4 months, wow, thank you for your streams. Well, thank you for coming to my streams and hanging out with me, and for being a part of our community here. What does that do? Alright, whatever. Oh, you hear a lot of whirring? Oh, that is my air filter. I'll turn that off. It does add a lot of background noise. It also keeps this room a little bit cooler, which is pretty toasty right now, but I'll survive. I might end up sweating a little bit. Okay, so one of the things I did to prepare these pieces to be sewn together is I flatlined some of them. It's mostly on the pink pieces, which the way I went about doing that was Yoshi Murphy, thank you for the sub for 4 months as well. Basically, flatlining is adding an additional piece of fabric to the back to, in this case, make it softer, make it slightly more opaque, and I didn't want to deal with a separate lining because it's also not a part of the instructions. So this is just my way of handling this particular fabric because it was a little bit translucent and it was a little bit scratchy, and I didn't want to wear something like that even though I really like the way it looks. So to kind of really simply get around that, I just added this flat lining. You can use pretty much whatever fabric is like a nice lining fabric for this. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. You could even use just like a really thin cotton for this if you don't want to use anything else. Something breathable or something that's going to be like comfortable or smooth on your skin is usually a good option. So anyway, I did that to most of the pieces before starting today's stream, and I also went and cut out all my interfacing and applied that to pieces that needed it. So that just, I was just following the instructions for that, but I didn't do it on last stream, so I wanted to mention it. That has already been done. So if you're following along and making this yourself, flatlining your pieces the way that I did it is totally optional, and depending on what fabric you are using, you might not want to or you might not need to, but doing the interfacing, you would just follow the instructions of the pattern, or pretty much just go ahead and iron on all of the interfacing pieces to the ones that say that they need it. And now with that out of the way, I will begin sewing. And I actually had the foresight to like set everything up and get my thread loaded before starting. And make sure you use the right stitch as well. There we go. I totally meant to do that. Jerica, thank you for stopping in to say hey before going along on your way. This did not... Oh, I see. It got, I'm gonna change my needle. I'm not into this. I need to make sure I have a fresh needle that's going to stitch through all of these pieces because this one, it looks like the tension is a little bit messed up. And I didn't test that before starting. This machine is supposed to automatically adjust tension, and it does, but it might have just not liked this fabric with this needle. I'm using cotton sateen for this, so it's pretty basic stuff. It's not anything fancy. So if my machine doesn't like it, that might mean that my machine isn't behaving the way that I want it to. But I have other machines, and we're getting this sound, so nothing will get in my way. I'm just totally gonna take this out, though. See, we're off to a good start. I start sewing and just immediately rip the seams out. But if anything, perhaps this can encourage you to know that it happens to me all the time too. And ultimately, I just want to make sure that I have seams that are like, you know, nice and sturdy. Okay, everything appears to be threaded fine, but I am going to change the needle. I think this one was left over from my last project, which I shouldn't have done. So how's everybody else? Anybody working on stuff today? Hey, Hero Legend. So yeah, I have more costume plans in the works now. My donation goal is still going with the intention of letting you guys pick a costume for me to do. That one will be more of a purchased item that I'll probably modify, but if you are here and active in tonight's chat, feel free to throw out costume suggestions because we are still taking those and just discussing options for what I might end up making. This is not come out the way I wanted to, but hey, I got my needle. I didn't drop anything. DV Deluxe just said they came back from visiting Greece, editing lots of videos. I just got back from London, and I have lots of photos to edit, which I'm really excited about, and I guess I can talk all about that trip if people are curious. I'm going to move my chat to the other side of my monitor so I can read a little bit more easily. Cool. Alright, let's try this again. I'm gonna grab a scrap piece of fabric real quick. I try to keep like a handful of scraps of the actual fabrics that I'm working with as I go, just so that I can test things and stitch through it and know that like how the actual fabric will respond, without having to redo a lot of seams because I got ahead of myself. Hear that? What do we got? Tiana SG, thanks for subscribing again for 10 months. That's awesome. Thank you. Okay. So this is all threaded up. Let's see if it likes it anymore. Double check my bobbin. The bobbin is what is not responding well. Oh, yep, it was a bobbin issue. Okay, cool. Well, that's figured out. And one more sample just in case. So my bobbin got put in backwards because I wasn't paying attention. I thought I got it the right way, but apparently not. And that's what was causing the thread to not sit well. Yep, that's perfect. Okay. Man, I thought I was paying attention. I've done this like a billion times. But there's always an opportunity to be wrong, I suppose. Okay, with that in mind, we're going to start stitching these seams and hopefully it will go swimmingly now that we have troubleshot? Done our troubleshooting. Let's use that grammar. And as always, we have the tunes of DJ Cutman and Radio Cutman to work by. And stay motivated. So the first seams that I'm sewing on here, we're pretty much at the very beginning of these instructions, which are downloadable from the Cutsew website. So we are putting the bodice pieces together. And I've already got these particular pieces lined up and ready to go into the machine, just because I did that right before hitting go live on the stream. But the rest of everything needs to be pinned together pretty much. Silex Studios is cross-stitching tonight? Yeah, that totally counts as sewing. It's stitching. Multiple cross-stitchers. Crafty X-Ray Girl is also doing a birthday present for their son. That sounds cute. Cat Neutrality is doing some design work and not knowing very much about sewing. Well, hopefully you'll learn something here tonight. Annabis Ash is asking, how was CoxCon? CoxCon was a lot of fun. Everyone there was super nice, from all of the other guests to attendees, people who were coming by to chat with us and cosplay and stuff, and I had a really, really good time. Yeah, the costumes I brought were Holo from Spice and Wolf and also Arwen. And on Saturday, Jared and I had an opportunity to step away from the con for just a little bit, and we went to, did I just lose? Yes, my cap. We stepped away from the con for just a little while so that we could go do a photo shoot at this nearby location that it was called, it's called a living museum, and what it is basically like a preserved Victorian village that had, you know, businesses and artifacts and costume actors walking around and like talking about everything and explaining stuff. And it was really, really neat to see because we don't have that stuff, you know, in the US for the most part. I know that there's a couple, there's at least one in Washington State, but it's not Victorian, it's like pioneer kind of. So it was a really different kind of museum experience, and they were super welcoming of people being in costume. Like, they didn't treat me like I was weird or anything, which I was happy about because I didn't want to be disrespectful, but they were very much like encouraging of costuming, because apparently they have like themed like steampunk weekends and stuff. If you want to get your steampunk costume on and go stand in the actual Victorian buildings with all of these Victorian artifacts and such. But that was definitely the highlight of the trip and the most memorable thing that we did. And yeah, it was just a lot of fun. snipping off all of my little extras. Yeah, I'd like to sit down and edit those photos from that holo shoot, but we took so many, it's gonna be a little while. Hopefully I can get a preview up in the next couple of days or something. I also wanted to get straight back to sewing because I didn't want to make this project last too much longer. I want to get this done maybe within this next week. If we make good timing, I might only need to do like 1 or 2 more streams. Okay, so I am just going back to my instructions and reading up on everything. So I stitched the front and back bodice pieces together, and it wants me to go ahead and press my seams, which I will do, but I also want to do as much stitching kind of all at once first, and then I'll take everything over and press it at the same time. So I'm just trying to streamline things a little bit. So this is bodice front and back. I guess I can like put this on right now and kind of see what it's gonna fit like. Hopefully I'll like it. The Game Boy camera pictures were amazing, says Daddy's Little Monster. Yeah, that was really fun. I thought that was really cute. Okay, so I believe this is folded under by like ½ an inch or so on each side. And then those pieces align. And if that's the case, it's still going to be baggy on me, but I'm going to probably take it in after I get these side panels on and see how that looks. I don't know. We'll see about that. I'll keep sewing things together for now, at least. And the next pieces it wants me to sew together will be the skirt front and back pieces along the vertical seams. So let's do that. I've got various bloomer pieces and other things as well, so let me kind of sort through stuff for a minute. That's all of the bloomers, I think. And this is all of the skirt pieces. So these pieces I flatlined on the inside. So that was just to make it a little bit softer. Everything gets lined up at the top because it needs to be adjusted at the bottom. That's really easy. Anae's Revenge is asking what pattern am I using. It is number 19 from Cutso. Hey Cutso. Or cutso.co is the web address for their site. I'm just using Wonder Clips. You can use sewing pins as well, but I like Wonder Clips a lot. That's the name of these little plastic clips that I'm using to hold the fabric together. Alright, I've got both sides of this ready to go together. Discobot, hey there. So this brother was the one I already had, but the brother that you donated went to one of my best friends who did not have a working sewing machine. So that brother is absolutely getting some good use as well. So thank you so much, Discobot. So Sheen says I could go for a beer right now. So could I. Maybe that will end up happening before the end of the stream. Depending on how much I get done, we'll see if I earn a beer by being productive. Lined up properly. Silex Studios says that they love this fabric. I completely agree. I found this and I was immediately just like, well, I have to buy this and make something out of it. And yeah, I love cutesy stuff and, you know, pretty colors and pastels is what I end up wearing. Pretty colors. I mean, that could be anything depending on what you think is pretty, but this is what I think is pretty. I like a lot of like rosy browns and anything that's kind of like faintly blush colored, like other kinds of neutral colors and stuff. Anyway, so this is the skirt panels have now been assembled at the side seams. Let me go back into these instructions. Okay. Well, it already wants me to go ahead and put the bias tape on, which I haven't prepared the bias tape yet. It wants to do that before any kind of gathering, which would happen next. That's fine. I need to make a couple more decisions though, because I'm gonna need to do some fitting on this bodice, because having already tried it on, I can just tell that it is gonna be a little bit too big for me, and so I want to address that before I do all of my gathering on the skirt to attach the skirt to the bodice, if that makes sense. So, with that in mind, I think I'm actually gonna skip ahead to step 9, let me see, is to go ahead and assemble the collar itself. Yeah, it really just wants me to have my bias tape already worked out. So maybe I need to just stop and do my bias tape before I keep going. Womp womp. That's alright. Let me see. I need to make some decisions about bias tape. So for us to do that, I'm going to set this down. I can also start assembling the bloomers if it comes to that, because those, I don't think have any bias tape on them anyway. So we've got stuff to stitch together, and we will today. I'd prefer to go in order if I can, because I think that'll make it the easiest for people who are watching this and making their own. But I'm also I'm trying to do things efficiently, and so while I do try to talk through my projects and give as much instruction as possible, I'm also just like ultimately trying to do things the best way for me. So for the bias tape, I have a couple different options. I was thinking that it would look cool, maybe, if I can pull this off in gold, which I haven't actually like tested this stuff. This is some really weird, cheap Lurex that I got from Joann's. Oops, and I just hit my camera with it. Discobot's asking, am I going to the Ren Fair? I would like to go to the Ren Fair, but I haven't like picked out dates and I don't know very much about it. But yeah, tell me which Ren Fair to go to. Heather and Harmony recently started working with the Hey Cut Sew pattern. Oh, that's awesome. I'm so glad that you're loving it. I hope you got that discount code when you made your purchase. But yeah, I've been really happy with these patterns. I think they're really cute and they're well made. And yeah, just like making this stuff. So there's like this weird, put it up here on the table. There's like a weird strip of fabric here at the edge there's like a little margin, so I'm just going to cut, it's actually plenty, cutting a chunk here. This is what it looks like. So if I can pull this off as a bodice trim, it will look something like this. Okay, so if this is a cuff around the arm, this would go here and form a trim. And I think that it's really cool looking. Okay, now I have to find out whether or not this stuff will cooperate in order to become bias tape. So let's see. One thing that I've noticed here is that aside from the piece that goes around the actual collar, none of the bias tape is set at an angle. It's all set like on the straight of grain, so it doesn't have to actually literally be cut on the bias, which is going to save me some fabric, and so that's why I'm pointing that out. I would say that most people are probably going to be doing this pattern or this project with pre-made bias tape, in which case, you know, great. We'll save you some steps. Heather and Harmony, thank you for subscribing. So yeah, don't be like me. Don't make your own bias tape. It's miserable, but it gives you endless possibilities for colors and textures. So, you know, there's that. I have no idea how this will respond to heat. It might just like get completely melted right away. I'm gonna attempt this with a couple of things. First of all, I'm gonna adjust this camera. This is just a test. Everybody cross your fingers for me and wish me luck, I suppose. Set these extra pieces aside. Okay, so I've got a couple of things here. Oh, there we go. This is an ironing mat, so instead of taking my stuff over to my ironing board, I'm just gonna do my ironing right here. These are great if you like live in a small apartment or something like that and you don't have a lot of space to get an ironing board out and put it away and all of that. It's pretty convenient. Hopefully not too much of a stretch on the cord. I need to make sure this is like really low heat, which it is. Okay, that is on the lowest heat setting I can get, and I also have a couple of other things. What size is this going to be? Bias tape maker. I did a video on how to make your own bias tape. So if anybody is like mystified by what's going on in these steps, you can find that directly on my YouTube channel, where I also talk through a little bit more in depth on why I'm using this tool and what happens here. But but I'm gonna kind of give you a brief overview. Let me grab some muslin that I came with a press cloth, and then we'll see what happens. Okay, this is a chunk of an old mock-up. And I'm gonna get some water to stay hydrated while I take this risk. First of all, let's see what happens if this touches the gold roll, whether it just gets completely messed up. Actually, no, it doesn't seem to damage it, but I don't know if it's really making much of a difference in the way of creating a crease either. So this little weird contraption that I have in my hand is a bias tape maker that is creating the fold the correct distance. But it works way better for fabrics that will cooperate. Which this might not be one of them. I also ran out of basting spray. I may or may not have some kind of fusible something I can put on the inside. Let's see about that. It looks like it can withstand the heat and the actual pressing though just fine, at least at the really low setting that I've got it on. So that's something. Let me look really quickly at some of my other supplies. Well, I know at one point I had some Wonder Tape, which is like sticky stuff designed to hold your pieces together, but I don't have any of that right now. Okay. I think I've made my decision that I'm going to skip the bias tape creation part of this stream because I think this information won't be useful to most people who are trying to put this pattern together. I think the majority of sane people here would opt to just use some sort of pre-made bias tape, and I might end up having to make that same choice too. I might decide to just go with a white cotton bias tape, which I actually have tons of. Let me see how that goes. I really like that gold though. I think the gold just looks really, really awesome. I actually don't have enough white to do it today, so if I decide to go buy this, I have to do, I'll have to go and get that from the store and then come back. So either way, I'm not going to put bias tape on right now. I might just end up going with the white. What do you guys think? Let's check everything out. I know I'm missing some things. Everyone's talking about the Ren Fair. Yeah, I'm gonna have to look up that Ren Fair and I'll try to go and do that as well. Oh, and Nae's Revenge is working on a costume for Labyrinth Masquerade. I'm a little jealous. I have gone for the last 2 years, but I won't be able to go this year. You know, as pretty as this gold is, I think it's going to be too much of a pain in the ass. And also when I think about the rest of the costume being just the pink and white, because the top of the bodice is white, I think that the white might actually be a stronger choice overall. But either way, I'm going to continue with some of the assembly of the other pieces, and I'm gonna most likely make my final bias tape decision, not a bias decision, I hope. I'll make that final decision on which bias tape to go for tomorrow or Friday, and have it ready and have bias tape in my hand for Saturday's stream. That's going to be my goal. So with that in mind, we are going to be working a little bit out of order, but I have more than enough stuff to sew together today. So the bodice pieces, I could also do some fitting on off stream, I think. Bodice pieces and skirt pieces are just going to hang out for a little bit over here. And we will move on to something that doesn't need bias tape for me right now. Let me just quickly put this away because it'll become a part of the mess if I don't do it right now. Or at least I will set these things aside. Alright, back to work on the next thing. I have the collar pieces, which can go together right away. So this is 2 layers of the collar. One of them has interfacing on it and one of them does not. I searched the piece that does not have interfacing so that it would not wouldn't fray at the edges, but the one that has been interfaced just doesn't need it because the interfacing also prevents fraying. Make it a little bit easier to see what I'm up to. So on this one, I'm placing them face to face, and I'm just gonna put it together. Oh, Vontography, thanks for the raid. I was actually lurking in your stream right before I started. Hey, I guess I'll come back and put my face in the camera. I was secretly lurking in your stream while I was setting up for mine, so thanks for doing those sweet edits. Yes, this is so sparkly. I am really excited about how sparkly this is going to be and how shiny I will be in my little baby sailor outfit. People are weighing in on my gold versus white bias tape decision. I know for a fact white is going to be just way more straightforward to get it done. But I think I'm going to experiment with the gold and see if I can make it work as bias tape, and if I can, then I'll apply it. And if I can't, then whatever. Next. Anyway, so these 2 collar pieces are going face to face. They should line up perfectly. And according to the instructions, you do sew them together first before applying bias tape to anything, so we'll get at least that much done right now. Oh, hey there, no use here voting for white. Okay, I'll have to take that into account. Who reads the instructions? Me sometimes, but you know, only when I'm on the spot on streams. And then this just gets stitched right along the outside. Let me check my instructions. You never read pattern instructions, says Nolu. I used to not, but kind of depending on what I'm doing, sometimes it's more worth it. Okay, add fusible interfacing, which I did. Okay, yeah, so then you go ahead and do the two collar pieces face to face, stitch around the edge, flip it out, and press it. So I've done that. Well, I'm going to do that next. And then you pin and sew your bias tape. Okay, so we'll get at least half of that done. Starting with sewing these two, sandwiching these bad boys together is happening next. Sometimes you can learn things from pattern instructions that you didn't know, like certain tricks for putting things together in a certain order that makes your life easier. But that said, I have skipped pattern instructions many, many times in my short life. And I thought, hey, you know, since I'm supposed to be like, you know, showing this pattern off, I should probably like read it. I think the real lesson to be learned here is that sewing is all about being brave and just going for it. Who needs instructions? I should scoot this back a little bit. There we go. It's a little bit more on camera. Have I tried to sew without pinning or clipping the pieces? I certainly have. It's like, I mean, if you're excellent and you're, I guess, like accustomed to that, then it can be the fastest way for sure. But I think especially for the purposes of my streams, it makes more sense for me to pin and clip everything. Hey Dragsaw, thank you for the resub for 4 months. Pleased to have you here. Now, this is rippling up a little bit, so let's see if we can work that out. Shifting a little bit, but I'm just gonna go with it. And actually, with that in mind, I'm gonna tie this off. Because I'd rather embrace this shift than resew things. Creefiest, thank you for the sub. Now, I wouldn't say that instructions are entirely unnecessary. Crafty X-Ray Girl says that when their mom was teaching them how to sew, the first thing she did was take the instructions and throw them in the trash, telling me they're unnecessary. I wouldn't go that far personally, because like I said, they can be a great reference for learning to assemble things in a certain way that will be faster for you. And especially when you're new to sewing, I would definitely recommend following them because you will learn terminology for things and you'll learn like the some of the more advantageous ways of like assembling things or which order panels need to go together in. But not always. Sometimes they're just unnecessary. So this, if this bottom piece ends up shifting again, it will end up sticking out. But the way that sewing machines feed fabric through is actually uneven. with the bottom piece with the feed dogs, which are these little guys that guide the fabric through. Those will tend to shift your fabric so that, especially with soft, shifty fabrics like this one, it will end up pulling the bottom piece through faster than the top piece keeps up with that. And that's even using a Teflon foot like I have here. So the way I'm going to fix this is I'm actually just going to trim off the part that's shifted, which is only like one of the pieces, and create a new fresh edge for myself. So I like kind of strategically push the fabric through in such a way that, I'm not going to use a ruler actually, because if it has a bit of a curve to it, I'm fine with that. That compensates for that rather than redoing anything. So there we go. This is how I wing it for making corrections rather than always having to undo your work. So there's just a sliver that I trimmed off. Oh wow, Disco Ball was taught without pinning. That's pretty awesome. That's just a huge difference probably between the style and the setting of your workplace versus mine. But sometimes you have to, pin the crap out of something to get into like really crazy little areas. But I don't know, maybe if you learn how to do it without, maybe you just never need that. You'll have to teach me your skills. Alright. But for the purposes of this stream and these sew-along videos, I'm going to continue pinning. I think it's the more traditional way of doing things. It's a more common way of doing things, for sure. Now I have a border all the way around the outside, and I think the way I'm going to handle this is just use my pinking shears to give myself a nice edge. Milieu saying terminology is an issue. I'm sure the lack of actual instructions is a contributing factor. Yeah, you know what? You will learn a lot about what stitches are called when you do your reading. Read your instructions. Alright, so I'm using my pinking shears here, which is these like zigzag style scissors, but they are pinking shears. Terminology. And the purpose of this is to prevent the fabric from fraying while I'm cutting some of this extra seam allowance off, and that'll help it turn more cleanly. I don't have to go around the whole edge, I only have to go around the curved areas. So this is kind of like I'm solving two issues with one step here, which is that I am clipping the curve. Sorry, I need to have this probably on my camera view. What this is doing for me is simultaneously clipping the curve, so it's removing extra fabric from the seam allowance that would otherwise make the seam bulky and wrinkly and not sit right. And then I'm simultaneously finishing the edge in such a way that the fabric will not fray, which is what the zigzag style cut does for it. Is preventing the fibers from fraying. So, I'm doing this only until like I get to the area that it's a straight edge. So the curved edge gets pinked and then the rest of it doesn't, but I think I'm just gonna, I'll probably serge that actually. I'll just do a quick serging stitch. Oh fuck, if I did serging, whatever. I'm committed to this pinking. I'll do the pinking on both sides, and then I'll probably just use a serger to combine that other seam real fast. Hey Aries, my small cat has come to join us. There he is. Dang, it is really hot in here. I'm like sweating. My house, I'm sorry, this room is on the side of my house where the sun sets, and it was just like unusually hot today, so got a little bit of that to do. It's just the late sunset. Just baking my craft room right now. Okay, so I have trimmed off extra seam allowance along with curves, and I am just going to toss this on my serger and get those seams together. Which, yeah, you can still see me, so I'm just going to do this right here before I step back over. My threads just came undone. So let me just rethread this and then we can continue. Begin the stitch again with both of my needles engaged. Much better. So I basically just combined two different finishing techniques. So the serging is along these curved seams, and yeah, I could have done it all on that if I wanted to, but I try to showcase a little bit more variety because generally speaking, a lot of home sewers don't own sergers, so they're not able to do this this bound edge so quickly on a machine like that. And so the pinking shears, these little zigzag triangle cuts, is a much more like accessible kind of technique for people to use. So there you go. Now I've got both sides sewn together. The excess has been removed around the outside. Oh, hey, Vintage Brittany saying, your craft room is lovely. Hoping to be inspired to actually finish some cosplay ideas, working on Normal Boots jacket, inspired by my video. Well, thank you so much, Brittany. But yeah. There we go. I'm gonna clip that corner out, actually. So, the last thing I do before turning it and making sure that it's looking just how I want it on the outside. I don't know where my good snips ran off to. I'm going to cut off these actual little corners. And just going flat across should be enough. Yeah, it's crazy hot kind of everywhere right now. Even the UK. I was just in London and it was so much hotter there than I thought it would be, and I was like, what is going on? I thought I was escaping the heat. Of course, I'm pretty lucky to be here in Washington, where it's usually pretty cool. Oh, near San Francisco, it's only in the 70s? Well, that sounds good. Let's all go there. Daddy's Little Monster finished the making part of one cosplay for the next convention. Cool. Well, congratulations, getting that stuff on your way. Cool, cool. All right, well, this is the rough shape of the collar, which will go on like this once the rest of it's together. It needs to be ironed so that it gets a nice crisp edge, and then it will need to have the bias trim attached. And at that point, I'll decide whether I'm gonna do white or gold, depending on what bias tape I have cooperating with me. Yeah, I like the way this fabric looks. Ooh, in the webcam, it's like, I guess that because the camera is a little bit grainy, the way that the metallic kind of looks and shines is really neat looking, I think. Alright, so there's that. Let me look at what we can do for the bloomers, and or which other pieces might be ready to be worked on a little bit. I might also just take a slightly different approach with the attaching the skirt part to the bodice, because I would like to line up the front opening, fold it in place, and then possibly kind of figure out how the fit on the bodice will change, and then I can kind of gather the skirt panels in from there. But I'm doing a little bit of improvising on that. And it looks like most other things will need bias tape on all the edges before we get started. But I can start working on the bow, which is all the way down on step 20. Those pieces are ready to go. See, maybe I'll get some finishing touches assembled first. Even though we're doing things out of order, we might still get a lot done today. So this one wants me to take, these are the cuff pieces. These aren't quite ready yet. This is bow knot. I didn't need two of these, but I accidentally cut two. This is the top bow, bottom bow. Yeah, and one interfacing, and a bow knot. And these are all sleeve pieces. Okay. So these are our bow pieces, which is the bottom bow, top bow, and the bow knot. And each of these have interfacing on one side. Let's see what it wants from us. The non-interfaced one goes right side up on the work surface. Top bow. Lay the interfaced over the top, face to face. So this guy, these two go face to face, like so. Pin and sew, leaving just a few inches to turn it right side out. Right. I'm just going to do some really minimal clipping here. cool. I'm switching with the interface piece up so that when my feed dogs pull the bottom piece through faster, it will not create ripples on the top. And instead, will hopefully line up perfectly. Cool. It works. Okay, now I'm actually going to stop sewing like halfway down this side and leave my turn-in spot on the long side of the fabric. Skip a few inches for an opening. Doesn't need to be that much. This fabric is quite thin and shifty and can be fed through pretty easily. One stitch too far. Cool. So now I have a rectangle that can be flipped inside out from a hole in the middle. Which is what I want. Look again at instructions. So we're on instruction number 21. That was 21. Okay. So it looks good. And then so I'm going to take a quick ironing break. Actually, I think I'll just put my iron back over here the way I had it, and I can do my pressing that way. Oh, first things first, we need to clip our corners the way I did the last time, which will just be at an angle. Keep it pretty minimal here, so that we're removing any extra material from that, from creating too much bulk at these corners when they get turned in. Okay, there's a notification. Let me pull that up. Zaphist, maybe? Xafist, just subscribe to Twitch Prime. Thank you so much. This bow together and making it look cute. I'm excited about this bow actually. Alright, so we've got all these corner pieces I'm just going to toss, and that should make this much easier to get the corners to lay flat. We're turning this top bow piece inside out. It is always super satisfying to finish up a fun cosplay. The camera adds 10 sparkles, says Bontography. I'm reading up a little bit. Let's see. Meg Moika is asking, oh, I see you have a serger in the back. What brand is it? It's a Janome Mylock 204D, and it's a hand-me-down. For some reason, when she was in high school, my sister convinced my mom to buy her a serger so that she could take in t-shirts, which doesn't make sense because you don't need a serger to take in the t-shirts. That was a major investment that she used like once. And so when I got into sewing, I was like, hey, I'm taking this. This is my serger now. And she was like, okay, I don't even know how to thread it. So that's how I got a free serger, was for some reason my sister thought she needed one and she didn't. And so I got it instead. And that was before I knew how to sew. I didn't learn until a couple years ago. So that machine was already in the family at the time. We are going to turn this again. Get some ironing board action right here. It's got this guy. This is just a little chunk of plain muslin that I was using from, it's like left over from a mock-up. First of all, I'm going to use a scrap to test how this fabric, this sparkly fabric, handles the iron in general. Because if I can just press it without the cloth, that would be ideal. I've been really hesitant to apply heat at all to it. Sometimes it can handle it, sometimes it can't. This is already a super low heat setting. Oh yeah, it doesn't seem to do any damage to it at all. It looks like it's just like flecks of gold vinyl that are maybe like heat transferred onto it, because it kind of has that same look as the way I've done my own heat transfer vinyl. In fact, for those of you who remember when I was making Zelda's coat, I've still got samples of that stuff laying around in my room. And this is what the heat transfer vinyl looks like when you apply it to just like a poly wool blend. And this is what the gold and pink fabric looks like. The color is very slightly different. This one's a little bit more saturated yellow, and this one's a little bit more like kind of bright. But they have a really, really similar texture, and they feel like they're more or less the same type of material. So I don't know. I don't know if that's true or not, but this is definitely heated up. I'm going to test this one more time to see if it handles it any differently after it's at its heat potential. I'm going to give it like a half turn. But I think this might just be fine to just press as is, which would be what I want. Link fan, welcome. Thanks for the $20 donation. Okay, yeah, it looks like it's going to handle the heat just fine. That's pretty good. Let's do both ends first. So I don't feel like these have to be like crazy crisp or anything. They just need to have that like fold line established. Because this is the nature of this fabric is just to be a little bit softer. It's a little bit shiftier. It's just going to be a little bit bubblier looking as a bow, I think. So it's not going to be like really, really flat with a hard edge like other fabrics might be. That's okay. It doesn't need to be like that. It just needs to be, you know, pressed flat. Because this is such a low heat, I'm going to do the other side too. I'm going to put a tiny bit more. So that way both the top and the bottom, the front and back, get there a little bit of a crease going. I ordered fabric swatches for my next costume already, and I have a wig picked out on the way, so hopefully I can make an announcement for that really soon. I like to have things like in order, ready to go before I reveal what's up, what's happening next. But I'm feeling pretty good about it overall. This little cut sew project I want to finish before I move on to any other costumes. So this will be going on. Saturday's stream will be more of this project, and then depending on how far I get, I might be done or I might have one more stream after that. And then after that we'll begin next costume. I'm gonna set aside my super shiny gold fabric before I let it get all nasty and wrinkled. Moving on to the bow. How's it going, Link fan? We're working on this sailor shirt and bloomers that we started right before I went to Europe. Here it is again for anyone who's just joining us and trying to figure out what it is that I'm making. It's this guy or this girl, and I'm excited. Oh, hey, Lauren's Turtles. Oh, hello, Hilda. Let's see, is there a sparkly purple version of this fabric? Asks Clockwork Piece. Not that I know of. I only saw this one when I was there, and so that's why I went with that. It is really hot here. It's hot everywhere. Okay. Checking my next instruction. So I have the raw edges of the open side of the bow in, then iron them flat. Edge stitch the seam closed by sewing an 1/8 inch of the way, closing the open end of the bow. Well, I have this. It wants me to edge stitch this part, I assume. And this will become the bow. Looks pretty good to me. Then place the non-interfaced bottom bow right side up, interfaced on top of that, faces together. I think this one shrank a tiny bit from the heat, which does happen depending on your fabric. In my case, it wasn't enough to stop me from using this piece. Let's see if I can. Yeah, this fabric shrunk very slightly when exposed to heat, which is not too much of a problem. I'm not going to recut or redo anything, but I just need to be aware that because of that, the top and bottom pieces don't line up flawlessly. And the way I'm going to deal with it is just by working with the, actually, I don't even have to change it. I just need to keep in mind they don't line up perfectly while I'm sewing them together. And then my seam allowances will just be slightly different. I am pinning a little bit more since I can't trust my eyeballs on this one. We'll see how this goes. Okay, so what does this want me to do? This wants me to place those two face to face, pin them together, and sew along 3 sides, leaving one side open to turn the bow right side out. Once the right side is out, iron it flat. So that's going to be one of these ends. All right. We'll start up here. So basically, because my interface piece shrunk a little bit, I'm just using the edge of the larger piece as my guide. And so the interface piece just has a slightly smaller seam allowance. It's not going to mess anything up, it's just something to be aware of. So I have 3 sides of this sewn, making a little tube. I'm gonna once again clip my corners of the corners that are established. Actually, I'm gonna do that on this side too, because get rid of some of that extra bulk when I fold it under. Okay, it's just kind of haphazard, but whatever. Seam allowance is fair game. Oh, Link fan just saw Princess Mononoke in theaters? That sounds fun. Oh wow, Silex Studios is talking about Wildfire, I guess. Link fan, CoxCon was amazing. I had so much fun there. I met a lot of really cool people and got to do a cool photo shoot with Jared in a like preserved Victorian town I was talking about a little bit earlier. I brought Holo and Arwen and I made some new friends and it was a good time. Good night, Daddy's little monster. We'll see you next time. Good luck at your job interview tomorrow. Well, we're rooting for you. All right, and Petrodactylus is also going to be lurking. Have a good one. Okay, so Nilia just subscribed. Thank you. Or thanks, Link fan, for gifting that sub. And Link fan has gifted 27 gift subs in his channel because he's our resident philanthropist. Thanks a lot, Link fan. Alright, so I'm just pressing this side down too to try to get a little bit more of a kind of ribbon shape going with this. Slightly, although it can handle the heat, so that's good. Everyone, cross your fingers that I don't iron mine. Sometimes you just gotta really get your fingers in there to kind of manipulate the fabric, and you're putting them on the verge of danger. Oh, I didn't bring my camera over here. See, look, I'm totally doing something, I promise. It's still pretty hot in this room. I might have to go get another drink here in just a moment. Some refreshment going on. I definitely plan to keep sewing for at least a bit longer. Do as much as I can here in the stream. See if we can get this bow together or anything else that might make us feel a little bit more accomplished. And then by next stream, which will be on Saturday, I will have my bias tape ready and make this promise to you, and then we will be able to do the final construction hopefully at that point. Alright, so this is the strip going along the bottom part of the bow. Here's top bow, bottom bow. This needs to get stitched down on both sides, but before I do that, I'm gonna go get a refill of water and also a beer because I deserved it. I've been working hard all day since way before the stream started, so I'm gonna go get a beer to drink as well as some more water. I will be right back. Gary's followed me back here, so we're both ready to get some work done. All right. Hey, Link fan, answering people's questions. I'm looking forward to Dragon Con too, Link fan. This outfit that I'm wearing, or that I'm working on now, I will be wearing at Dragon Con because this pattern company, Cutman, is going to be at Dragon Con. So I want to put it on and go and visit them at their booth and say hey. Okay, So it looks like it just wants me to finish stitching my stuff, fold everything under like so, and assemble the bow by putting the knot around it and folding everything. So let's do it. I'm just pressing this down a little bit before I do that. Now I can top stitch this, or I can hand stitch it in such a way that there won't be any stitching visible on the outside. And the instructions tell you to top stitch it, which is the easier way of doing it. It's the more like simple, straightforward, basic way of doing things. But it's really not hard to hand stitch it closed in a way that will make everything nice and hidden. And so I think I might take my time and do that right now, since I do have a little bit of time, and I can show everybody what I mean by that. Give me just a minute. So I've got a thin needle here, some extra pink thread. It's like the very, very end of a spool. I also have this stuff called Thread Magic. It's just like a little conditioner for your thread that makes it easier to work with. So when you pull this stuff through, it like kind of adds a waxy coating to it. Oops, I'm hitting my camera again. That will make it a little bit more manageable and a little bit less prone to getting twisted up as you stitch, but we'll see how effective it is. Come on, please. There we go. Managed to thread it since I asked nicely, I suppose. Sometimes, depending on what I'm hand stitching, sometimes I tie the two ends together and sometimes I tie a single end. And this is one of the occasions where we'll tie a single end. So the stitch I'm going to teach you today is, has a couple of different names. I guess I'll call it the ladder stitch. I think that's the most common name. I could be wrong. But look up ladder stitch if you want a reference for this. And it may tell you some other names for it as well. I'm going to make sure this knot is nice and tied off in such a way that it's not going to poke through the fabric. We'll see. I made a robust knot. Okay. Okay. Coming back for stitch learning, says Petrodactylus. Okay, well good. I will start with this end because it's a little bit easier to see. Basically, I folded this over and ironed it as they instructed me to do. But rather than just mashing them down and stitching across all of the layers, I'm going to do this hand stitch in order to draw it closed from the outside in a way that you can't really see it. So to get this started, I have my opening, I have it kind of folded down and marked where I want it to be closed, and I want to begin my stitch from the inside so that the knot at the end of the thread ends up on the inside. So I'm just like coming out from the inside like that. And now I have a thread at one end coming out like that. Okay. So now I'm going to go in and then out on the same side, kind of putting my needle flat against this ridge where it's ironed. And you just pull it, and then you line it up and do the same thing on the other side where you go in kind of along this ironed edge and then back out. And so my needle is traveling like the same direction as this edge that I've created. Sorry. Yeah, this is, oh, it's getting tangled. Can't have that. I'm gonna fix this. No, I'm not. It's messed up. Yeah, it just snapped my thread rather than fixing it. All right, well that's my own fault because of the knot that formed. But let's see what we can do for this. All right, I'm probably just gonna start it fresh because I lost my thread. That's a bummer. That was not the fault of the stitching. That was just my thread getting tangled and then not being able to be drawn through all the way. It happens to the best of us. So I'm gonna continue in the same manner. The only thing that just failed there was my thread not going through smoothly. Get that bad boy tied off again. This is one of my favorite songs on this album. Alright, so beginning once again, same spot where I just lost my stitch. Coming from the inside so that knot is hidden on the interior. Folding this over so that our two like iron flat edges are forming the point where this is now going to be a seam, and then I'm like stitching along the top of them by drawing this needle through in such a way that it like hugs that ironed seam. And as it goes, it draws the two sides together. And the thread kind of goes back and forth on each side like the rungs of a ladder. And I'm actually going to backstitch a little bit just by doing the exact same thing, going the opposite direction, because my hand stitches are a little bit bigger than my machine stitches would be. Oh, come on, please don't form more knots. I hate this thread so much. This is like old thread and it's just giving me a hassle. I think also just trying to have it like held up for the camera makes me a little bit less attentive to how that thread is like turning in on itself. So pardon me for a moment while I just trying to tangle my own fingers in this. I promise I can totally sew. I'm like good at it. Or something. Let me do a couple more stitches to get rid of this excess thread that's really driving me crazy, and then I'll bring this back up to the camera. Okay, so now I'm like almost halfway down this side. Once again, starting on the opposite side, kind of skimming along that top fold crease. And I'm using my thumb to make sure that thread doesn't twist in on itself too much. And onto the other side. So this might be hard to learn on a stream just because, you know, my camera only shows so much detail, but you can look up ladder stitch and find probably some more clear tutorials that would give you like still photos to work with. And once again, I'm kind of adding in some back stitches periodically just to make sure that it's not too loose. That's just kind of however many you need to make it feel secure. Approach that with my needle. Okay. Cool. At the very end now. I'm going to give it a couple of extra stitches just to be really secure. Okay, so I gave it a little back stitch, and now all I need to do is tie this off as discreetly as I can. Which depending on how you work it, you can sometimes like kind of shove it down into a little crease in such a way that the knot gets lost, and that's ideal. But whatever happens, you just want it to be secure. And at the very least, this type of stitch is going to be more discreet than top stitching through everything, which is I'd say more of a beginner way of handling things, which is totally fine if that's like all you have time for, all you have energy for, all you want to do. And it's the way that the cut sew pattern describes how you should do it, probably just because these are extremely beginner friendly patterns. And so, you know, the idea here is probably just to make the instructions as simple and straightforward as possible so that you know, you don't get overwhelmed thinking like, oh no, now I have to learn a new hand stitch too just to finish this. And a lot of sewing is like that, where you can use, you know, a number of different techniques to kind of arrive at the same solution, or like different solutions to solve the same problem. And you know, any one of them are acceptable solutions depending on what your goals are, you know, how much effort you're putting in, whether it's a contest piece, etc., etc. So it's not wrong to just like stitch down over the top if that's what you want to do. But the more you learn about like how to incorporate different types of hand stitches and that sort of thing, the more that you can fine-tune your garments and make them look really nice and professional. Okay, so here's that pink thread again. I'm going to do the exact same thing to my other piece, and holy crap, I am sweating so much in here. I might have to end the stream just because this is so miserable. Yeah, these are parts of the bow, mimetic, so the little bow that's like on the front of the chest. You'll see it a little bit better in just a minute, but it's more or less like that, with a centerpiece around it to form a bow. So that needs to be, you know, cleaned up and done properly, but that's the gist of it. And let's see, did I just tie that off? I did. Yeah, I think it's just a combination of it being hot outside today and my room being full of sun during the sunset and having all of these lights on me. It's just making me sweat a lot. So we'll see how much longer I make it streaming today. It's already almost 2 hours. Okay. So I've got my thread started for the inside, and once again I'm just drawing it closed by alternating my needle along this crease on both sides. Is going pretty well this time. I haven't had any unwanted knots, although I just immediately got my thread wrapped all the way around my stuff as soon as I said that. Getting close, almost done with closing up this open section. So I really like doing this. I like hand stitching. I don't know, a lot of people don't, but for me it feels really like relaxing or something. I like having a little bit of fine-tuned control over like the little last steps of the costume, like closing it up these holes and things like that. So I like doing it this way. You certainly don't have to, but if you haven't done it this way before, maybe you learned something new today. I think this is a really useful stitch to know for a lot of different solutions or situations, especially where you might be trying to fix something. Like if you have a piece of clothing that the stitches have popped and you don't really want to start taking everything apart and trying to figure out how to get in there. You can close something up from the outside and have it look fairly nice this way. Okay, we are complete. So now I just kind of take up a little bit of the material on the interior there and place my knot. This thread is just like mega prone to twisting and creating knots. But hey, I got it. No more knots. Yeah, I gotta stay hydrated in my sewing room right now. Okay, I'm nearly done with this bow, which might be my goal for this stream, is just to finish this little bow. So the way I need to go about that is by folding and ironing and stitching this center knot piece down kind of as tightly as I can. So I'm going to start over here. While it cools down, because that's what really creates a crease in the fabric, is letting it cool. Sides first. Put away some of these extra clips. One side folded and stitched. The other side too. And one's going to do this on all sides to create a little bounding border around this tiny rectangle. I'm not doing much back stitching on this because it's so little and I'm so close to the edge it can hardly handle it. So it also doesn't need something that much. We've got quite a lot of cosplay talk going on in the chat. People, Stars of Cassiopeia, thanks for helping people out with some fabrication advice. I'm always happy to see people working on stuff, even when I'm lost in concentration on my weird little pieces of things. How are we doing here? Yes, so it wants to gently iron and fold all sides of this and stitch it all down. And then it's just a matter of hand stitching the bow together in such a way that it's scrunched up. So I'm probably gonna get almost there. I think I'm gonna end this stream in just a little bit. I've been going for about 2 hours and many more hours before I started streaming today, so I think I'm nearing the end of my stamina for today. But at the very least, I want to get this bow kind of like prepared, and then I'll show you how I'm going to hand stitch it, and I'll probably do my hand stitching right off camera. This probably doesn't have to be machine stitched either. I can hand stitch this if it gets a little unruly or hard to control the fabric. But so far so fine. I say as my machine like insists on sliding out of position.
You're listening to Radio Cutman.
These will be secured by hand stitches on all ends, so I'm not too concerned about the back stitching because my machine will just honestly munch through this fabric if I try to get those tight back stitches on there, so you don't really have that option right now. But never fear, it will be nice and clean by the time I'm done. I'm actually not even going to do the last side because that's going to be on the bottom. So there we go, I saved myself a little step. So the way this will go, I think I'll have this be my outside. Gonna get scrunched. How many times and exactly where is a matter of taste. Let me look at what the illustration says. This. The outside. There we go. I need some good old-fashioned sewing pins for this. Kind of shoving pins in vertically to give you that impression for where that's going to sit, and then the bow bottom, and make sure that you want it, you like how it's positioned and all of that, which for me is probably going to be like hold it over once, jam it on in there. Yeah, I'll make sure everything's lined up before I like stitch it for good, but that's what we're looking at. Yay, that's pretty cute, right? That's a bow. That is a bow. So I'm going to do the actual hand stitching and have it all secured off stream because I want to end this stream before I just completely sweat. It is right about 9 o'clock, so I've been streaming for about 2 hours, which seems like a good enough time as any to call it a night. I got a good amount of this starting to be underway for assembly. You can see how super shiny this is. Anyway, I'm going to call it a night. I'm tired. I've got a lot on my plate, and I'm glad I got a little bit of progress done on this. So here we are. This is what it's going to look like. Before I start my next stream on Saturday, I will have my bias tape ready, and then we can go back and go in order and get everything done. to make it look the way it's supposed to and get it all finished. So thank you guys so much for joining me. I will see you next time on Saturday at 1 p.m. I'm going to stick to my normal streaming schedule, or if there's any sort of delays, I'll announce it. But Saturday afternoon, Cutso part 3 of making this sailor shirt and bloomers, and I'm gonna go relax in a cooler room for the rest of the night. Alright, I will see you guys Saturday. Thanks for joining me. Bye!